What's up, everybody? Ben Lampkins here with Angler's Itch Outdoors. It is bitter cold out this week, and they're talking about getting below zero temperatures, so I figured what better time to go inside where it's warm, talk about one of my favorite topics is catfish baits. We're going to talk about some of the different catfish baits. We're going to talk about the different catfish species, some of their behaviors and baits that they each prefer, and then we'll kind of maybe discuss a few other things. So come on in with us. Let's sit down and talk some fishing. Alright, everybody, we're just going to kind of get set up here. Kind of have my notes here to kind of keep me on track because I tend to ramble on or get off subject, and this will kind of keep me, well, at least I'll probably go off subject anyway, but this will kind of get me back at where I was, hopefully. So like I said, this is one of my favorite topics, kind of an important one because if you think about it, I mean, you got the best rod, reel, hook, boat, electronics in the world, and none of that's going to make that fish actually bite. So by having the proper bait, understanding the different baits is what's going to kind of make that connection for you, especially when it kind of gets into these trophy-sized catfish. It's kind of what did it for me. I was kind of doing all the right things, but not with the right bait, and just wasn't making that connection. So by getting the bait figured out at the right time, the right place was kind of a big help to me. So hopefully it will be for you as well. So we kind of have some things to go over. This is going to be kind of just one of those talking videos, not much action. Like I said, it's pretty cold out there. I would be out there, I'll be honest with you. There's not much that kind of keeps me from getting out there, but we just got some things going on. I don't know how these boat ramps are going to be, slick or what have you not. I was at the boat ramp not long ago. I kind of wish I had it on video. I got out and walked to the back of the truck to go unhook the boat and busted my butt on the ice there from the waves coming in. So that was fun, but I kind of got a kick out of that. But anyway, so I guess we'll kind of start here. Some of the things I got wrote down here. I guess we can get some of the myths out of the way, so as we go forward we'll kind of understand that part, and we'll kind of go over the myths, but I want to go also point out that this is fishing, this is nature. Anytime you mess with stuff like that, as you probably know, is that there's exceptions to any of this stuff. So what I say here may or may not work for you or haven't, or may kind of go against some of these topics or whatever. That's just how it goes, but I'm kind of wanting to talk about baits and consistency. That's kind of what you want as a fisherman and woman is baits that are going to consistently put those fish in your boat, and the bigger fish, obviously. So just keep that in mind. We'll kind of go over all this stuff. I kind of have a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type mindset with it. With all these kind of fad baits and stuff that are coming out. You got your tried and true baits that's been around that are always got to work. And they've put a lot of trophies in the boat. I really don't see the sense of steering away from that, unless you're just kind of struggling with getting the bait or whatever. But that being said, we'll kind of talk the myths first, get those out of the way. One of the things is I've always heard, I usually hear it from people that either don't know a lot about fishing or don't fish at all. When I bring up, I like catfishing, they always say how they know somebody that will put some chicken in a bucket and go let it sit out in the sun and rot, and they just catch all kinds of fish on that. Which that's always their brother's uncle's cousin's friend or whatever. Now that's not my approach to it, because with any of these baits, for the most part, and especially with these big trophy cats, is freshness is key to regardless pretty much of what any bait you use. I don't know where that, letting your baits rot and stuff. I'm not saying it hasn't caught fish. I think if it has, that probably would be more of a, maybe kind of gets the channel cat's attention, but even they can be, want something a little more fresh. But they tend to go after those smellier type. That's what, stink baits and stuff. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. And even if it does work, I mean, why you want to be messing with those rotten baits when you don't have to, when you can just use some of the even fresh chicken, that does great. I'm sure, you've seen a lot of videos of guys catching them on chicken, and why sit there, why wait for it to rot and have to deal with that smelly bait. So we'll kind of get that out of the way, but big one is freshness is key. Fresh bait. So try to avoid freezing it if possible. We'll kind of go over what, if you do have to use a frozen bait, well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But try to get that fresh bait. Get good with these cast nets or even rod and reel on catching some of these baits, and transporting them, keeping them, alive or fresh, depending on what your kind of plans are. That way you get a better bite and you get those bigger fish interested. Another one I want to kind of go over is catfish, and I was kind of guilty of this in my younger years. Catfish are just kind of, brain dead fish that go around scavenging, picking up, eating anything, and they just feed on the bottom. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. They can be actually a very selective type fish, and they seem to have certain moods or whatever you want to call it that that determines what they're going to want. I mean, I come to learn, like, some days they want to just feed on the heads of shad, or some days they just want the bodies, or some days they're just hitting bluegill, or whatever the reason. So it turns out they don't just swim around just that simple, and saying they will eat anything, that word's kind of thrown around a little loosely. I think they'll eat anything that's on their menu when they're in the mood for it, I guess you could say. And it's usually going to be something fresh. And sticking with, like some of the bait fish, going with native baits of that water. So if you're at the river or whatever that lake has, baits that are in the waters are going to be a good starting point if you can get them. So always kind of keep that in mind. Fresh, native, and they can be selective. So just kind of keep those in mind. If you kind of go in there knowing that you may have to change things up, just like crappie guys got to change their jigs out or their colors. Bass guys got to change out, their different lures and colors. So, except you're just doing it with baits. Catfish can be the same way, So, just kind of keep in mind that they can be a little selective. And as far as the bottom feeders, that's not always true. I mean, yeah, they usually hang around the bottoms and feed off the bottoms, and I fish the bottoms a lot, but I've also caught them 2 foot under a bobber, or suspending. How many times, and even out crappie fishing with minnows, on a bobber. I'm sure some of you crappie guys have got tangled with a few either channel cats or whatever, blues, flatheads will hit your shiner or minnow you got out there, and next thing you know, your drag's pilling on your ultralight. So just being on the bottom's not necessarily true. You can use some of these floats and stuff to get your baits off the bottom, and you come to find out that that's not just always the case. So we got a few of those things out. Let's see here. One of them you always hear, flathead only eat live bait. It's another one that's not necessarily true. They are a little more selective of the 3, I would think, but fresh cut bait will do pretty good for flathead. But that live bait does tend to draw them in pretty good. So I think that's where a lot of that comes. But it doesn't have to be live bait to catch them. So you hear that a lot, but you definitely can catch them on good cut bait. We'll kind of get the myths out of the way. I've actually got some coffee brewing up there. I may take a little break here and go fill up and maybe get back with you here. So that being said, I guess we could start. We got those covered. Let's just start with what I call your premium baits. Those top baits that are gonna get those trophy cats, get more bites. It's kind of that if it ain't broke, don't fix it type bait that's been around. I'm going to put, you got your gizzard shad, skipjack. I'm even going to throw goldeye, mooneye up in there. And mainly reason B is because they're usually throughout, most states are legal, and they're can be easy to get large amounts of them. Now, this is where that selective part comes in. Gizzard shad is your best winter bait. So if you're out winter fishing, seems to be shad. Not that you won't catch them on other things. I definitely have. That's that exception thing I was talking about. But if you definitely want to up your game there, got a deer coming up in the backyard here. You can see him out the window. We can, let's see here, where was I? Oh yeah, gizzard shad in wintertime. That's why I got my notes. So that's that selective thing I was talking about. Using those shad, knowing that, it's wintertime, I want to use the best bait that's possible. That's going to be your winter bait. So I like gizzard shad all year round. Obviously, it's going to work all year round, but especially in the wintertime. I really try to make sure I've got that in the boat. And that's one of my favorites. Skipjack, another great one. I don't have access to a lot of that. I know I think more south you go, you get more into those. But I'd love to have some of them. But I don't. I have such good access to the gizzard shad. I just stick with that. Goldeye, mooneye, catch those at the river sometime when I'm throwing my cast net. I think you can catch those rod and reel. They're kind of hard to come by as well for me, but if I get into them, yeah, it's kind of exciting. I'm like, these are hard to come by. I finally got some good bait. I've caught my first trophy on goldeye head in the wintertime. So, like I said, you definitely can catch them on other things in wintertime. So I'm putting those as your premium baits, your top baits, and obviously there's got to be your group. I kind of like, you could argue up there as well. You got your suckers and creek chubs, bluegill. One that you don't hear much about is green sunfish, because you always say, bluegill are great flathead catfish bait, but green sunfish for some reason seem, if you actually hold them in your hand, they seem a little softer than like a bluegill. Bluegill kind of prick you a little bit and a little bit tough. I wonder if that's the reason why they really like those green sunfish or whatever. Who knows? But those are one. Bullheads are great. I know a lot of guys use those live for flathead. Believe it or not, you can catch catfish on catfish. Some states, some of these things are legal, some aren't. White bass, crappie, even I think largemouth bass can be used. I know you tournament guys don't like me saying that, but those are some of the baits. That's kind of gets to where it's like they'll eat anything, but yeah, they'll anything either native to that water or whatever they're in the mood for. Some days they just want something other than this. So those are a lot of the things that you can kind of argue up there with it, and I wouldn't really argue back on it. I mean, those are all great baits. One of them I like to use and might as well talk about, but this one's you got to kind of watch it with this one, is your Asian carp, silver carp, big head carp. That's an invasive species, so some states don't allow it. I'm here in Missouri. We're allowed to use it so long as it's a cut bait. They don't want you using it live and getting out there in the waters and spreading and what have you. But that's a great one. The main reason is they're invasive, so they're just thick. I go to Missouri River behind wing dikes, and they're just absolutely thick out there. Usually easy bait to come by. That's here's the selective thing again. Is that's more of these carps and baits like that would be more your summer baits. So you can definitely catch them in wintertime on these things. But again, we're trying to increase your odds here that your carps are going to be more of a summertime bait, but they can definitely produce trophy type catfish. Now the silver carps and Asian carps and stuff like that I've used. Talk about a tough bait. As far as staying on the hook, I mean, if you want a bait that'll stay on the hook, you can catch multiple fish on that. Asian carp's one of them, man. I tell you, it's it's like a hunk of leather you put on your hook, and it'll stay on there. So if you like those types of baits, maybe look into them. Make sure that it's a legal bait where you're at. But it'll definitely stay on that hook. But again, freshness is key. Keep it fresh. And even changing out your bait so often, keeping that fresh. I'm the type, I like it so fresh, I like them alive, like my shad and stuff. When I go to actually cut them, I prefer them still alive when I'm cutting them. That way it just bleeds so much better. It's more fresher. It's just how I like it. You can catch them, on baits, not alive, but my shad, I try to do it. I just feel better about it. I like all the blood on my cutting board. And it just puts the blood out, and I have no problem, keeping my shad alive, at least when it's colder out. And then I think I went over like freezing baits if you have to. I mean, they can work. I don't know if I mentioned it, but like if you're gonna do a frozen bait, it seems like skipjack's the one that they don't seem to mind as much as some of the others after being frozen. Don't know why. There's that kind of selective thing. I haven't personally put that theory to test, but I do tons of research and talking to other guys and stuff and about that go out and pursue these big catfish consistently. And for some reason, if they say if you're going to go frozen, skipjack's the one to go with. So that's kind of, but you can catch them on frozen shad. Problem is it gets mushy, hard to stay on the hook, and your bite rate tends to go down a little bit. Now I'm not saying you can't get out there, get some shad, throw them on a cooler of ice, take them out later, and go fishing with them. That's still considered pretty fresh to me. I think it's that frozen part that when they freeze, that it just makes those shad mushy, and it just the bait just kind of goes downhill from there. So if you're having to use a frozen bait, skipjack's one, but know that like if it's a bait shop or something that carries it, know that not all frozen baits equal because of how it's packaged and how that process is getting it to package can actually play a part. So you don't want to just get the bait, throw it on ice, take it home, throw it in a freezer and in a bag, and you're good. If you take the necessary steps of prepping that bait, vacuum sealing it, definitely makes it a little hardier. I think some guys will put salt in the ice when they catch it until they can get it cleaned up and put in a zip or vacuum seal bag and put it in the freezer, and then that tends to hardy it up a little bit. Seems to have a little more freshness effect to it. So those are kind of things, if you do have to go that frozen route, that'd be kind of the way to go. So we kind of cover all the other baits for those types of baits that I just described, your premiums and kind of the natives and things. Those are also another reason why I call them premiums is those are the baits that are also going to trigger that flathead bite, which is kind of a big thing for me. I want to make sure that every time I'm out there that I increase my chances of even a flathead coming by and wanting to eat what I've got out there. Some of these baits that you can catch some of these other catfish on, they won't really mess with. So that's the reason why I put those in the premium categories, because those are the baits that also are going to live or cut get those flathead to bite as well. Even when I'm out blue cat, and if a flathead's out there, I definitely wouldn't mind hooking up with him. So I want to make sure that chance is there that a flathead's going to want to bite. So we'll kind of talk about we'll kind of talk about, you always hear or see using heads, shad head, carp head, bluegill head. For me, that's always been the best part. So I would never just chop that off thinking it's just a hunk of bone. They wouldn't want it. They sometimes prefer that over the rest of the bait. I kind of have a theory of it is, I don't know if it's ever been tested or scientists have figured it out or whatever, or biologists, but growing up, I always watched a lot of nature and animal shows. Most kids would be watching cartoons, but I was always fascinated with some of that Wild America and shows like that. Old Marty Stauffer. I'm sure some of you probably might have seen some of that. But anyway, I would always talk about how grizzly bears would catch the fish certain times of the year, and they would only eat the heads and the skin and the eggs of the fish they caught. So that being selective. Also, killer whales will kill like a giant blue whale and or orcas will kill a giant blue whale and just eat the tongue. That's being selective. So in nature, they have some instinct that tells them at times what to target, and they'll just leave that whole whale, just eat just the tongue, because those are the most nutrient parts. That it takes the least amount of energy and gives you the best nutrients in return. And I think it's the same thing. Catfish know that. That head has, I think, the brains, and I don't know all of it, but it just has the higher fat content and calories that they're really after. Because they're out in the wild. They got to really watch that energy, especially when it's colder. They don't have the luxury like us just to go in the fridge and grab something and sit down and eat it. It takes effort for them. And they want to try to get the best bang for their buck, technically speaking. So that's kind of my theory on maybe what that whole head thing's about. I don't know if anybody's ever really looked into that. I'm sure they have, but that's my thought on it. We'll kind of let's get into stink baits. That's another category, stink baits. I put that more with your channel cat. And summer bait. That's another summer bait, just kind of getting into your stink baits. Before I started going after like trophy cats, more your bigger blues and stuff, I always, grew up fishing for channel cat and always used stink baits. We would use, at the time it was called Sunnies, now I think they call it Triple S. Excellent stink bait. It's a dip bait actually. I caught a lot of channel cat over the years. Fished with it a lot. Most of my life I fished with it. We will say that's pretty much what it's going to catch, though. I've never caught a blue on it. Not saying that you could, but and definitely no flathead. That's where these stink baits kind of aren't the premium, because then you lose that chance of that flathead bite. But it's definitely. I know there's other brands. I don't know whether all what work and what don't. I can't say they're all created equally, but the ones I've used, that old Triple S, used to be Sunnies, is excellent. But it's definitely a summer bait, and it's. I hear a lot. It can be hard to keep on your whatever type. Sometimes they have little rubber worms or sponges and stuff to keep it on. I always had like this little ringy type. It's just a rubber black worm with the treble hook on it. I always use that. I would kind of clip it in half so they would go for the hook more so. But have that dip bait out in the sun, and it had to be like the right temperature for it to really stay onto those worms good. So downside of that is it can be a struggle getting it on there. But when the temperature's right and it's kind of melted a little bit in there, it'll stay on good enough till you get a bite. But as it starts to harden in the cooler weather, it's tough to get on there. If you can, it works great. You can definitely get into a mess of channel cat with it. Just kind of keeping it on the hooks, the thing. I think some of those dip baits, when they get older or start getting harder, you can mix in, I think, a little bit of cooking oil and stir it up in there. It kind of gets it loosened up a little bit, so you can dip in it. And that kind of works pretty good. Problem with some of the dip baits is if you fish current, depending on how heavy of a current that is, tends to wash it off. So, but I used it a lot in lakes when I was going after channel cat. I may even make some videos this when it warms up on some of these other baits and other, some of these channel cat and stuff like that, because I still like catching them. But when I really like getting out there catching the big ones, I'm sure you can relate with that. So channels, they'll hit more of that stuff, but you kind of lose the bites of the other. Definitely, that's where I don't even know. I'd like to know in comments if anybody's even really caught a flathead, or at least kind of consistently caught one on any kind of dip or stink bait. I could see maybe a blue, but I don't know. Just maybe let me know in comments if you ever did or witnessed it. So got stink baits, grocery store baits. Talk about that a little bit. That seems to be a big one lately, is the chicken. So chicken, your hot dogs, little smokies, liver, and I can even put, like Walmart carries night crawlers. Don't forget those. That's a live bait. It's a fresh bait. So there you go. You can actually get into a mess of. You can catch all three species on them. You can get quantity. It's not really my go-to if I'm after a trophy size blue or flathead, but sometimes they are in the mood for those smaller baits. They'll hit a worm. You can catch them on them. Which I wanted to throw that out real quick. Another wintertime thing to keep in mind is sometimes they like the smaller baits. Again, that selective thing. If you're fishing winter, you seem like you need to, your bites aren't as hard as you want, or they're just not hit. Maybe try downsizing. I've caught big trophy cats on just a little piece of shad like that, size of a cracker. So, and that being said, you also be surprised at the size of bait they will take as well. But maybe we'll get into that a little bit. I'm getting off subject here. So grocery store baits. So I'd say out of those, if you're going after trophies, I would probably go with the chicken out of that. So and some people are running that whole Jello, cherry Jello, all that stuff. I don't get into all that. Like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I stick with what's worked for years. But I think it's proven that now that it's been out for a while, a lot of people now they're starting to test with and without that, and they're still catching them on just plain chicken. So if you're kind of in a hurry and you're wanting a bait that will still get you that bigger fish, chicken's a good one. However, you're kind of losing that flathead bite there. That's kind of why I don't quite have that up in that premium. Some guys could argue it. I think it's a great, catfish bait, but you're losing your flathead bite there. So that, to me, that's kind of a big one. Your hot dogs, that's great. Channel cat, probably blues would hit it. Great farm pond type of bait. Little smokies, liver. I mean, that's one I don't get into much because it's hard to keep on a hook. But there's definitely guys that love it, catch a lot on it. But when you can just go get regular chicken, it stays on the hook a little better, and you can catch those bigger cats on it. I would just go with regular chicken over that. And since we're in the store, let's talk about that Walmart shad that comes in the pack that sits on the shelf in the liquid. Stay away from that. It don't work. I don't even know how they keep selling that stuff. It's you're better off going, if you're that desperate, go get you a thing of worms or some hot dogs or chicken. That stuff just I don't know what's up with it. Kind of funny story with that real quick. I was down in Florida fishing some brackish water, and we were using like shrimp, and there's some birds, I don't know the type of birds down there, but they're aggressively, every time you cast or you'd be reeling in the fish, those birds were trying to grab it off your hook. Sometimes they get it, if you're reeling in a fish, or so we're kind of throwing some baits out there that we're getting done for the day. I was throwing out, and the birds were eating. The kids were with us. One of the kids had a bag of that Walmart shad, and these birds were aggressively feeding whatever you threw out there. And somebody threw that Walmart shad out there, it grabbed it and it spit it out and looked at it like, what did you just do? And it started like swimming away. So something about it, I don't know what it is. If the birds are that way with it, then I assume the fish are probably going to be that way with it too. So save your money, go to something better at the store. You know, if you're at Walmart or whatever, get you some night crawlers or some of those other grocery store baits. So let's see here. I think that kind of covered some of the summer baits are going to be your stink baits and carp as far as the cut bait goes, or even live bait. Oh yeah, the sizes we're talking about. Wintertime they hit smaller bait, but definitely don't underestimate the size of some of the baits that these big trophy fish can eat. I mean, if you may have never, if you're new or haven't got to the one that big, or got to witness how big, especially a flathead, they start getting 50 pounds and up, the size of the mouth on them thing, you can fit your head in it. And they'll take a bait that big if they need to. I mean, I think kind of a good thing about social media is you see a lot of these reels and pictures of flathead with a 2-pound fish tail sticking out of its throat because it just swallowed a giant piece of bait. Or I've seen them cutting some of these bigger fish open and there'd be a whole a mallard duck in its stomach, or a big long snake, or so they can definitely hit some of these bigger baits. I mean, if you could stick a carp head off of a 2-3 pound carp out there, they'll hit that no problem. So that's usually when it's warmer weather. I like to use them bigger baits. Not that you couldn't catch them on them in the wintertime, but don't be afraid to throw something big out there, especially if you got a few different rods. Change it up a little bit until if you're trying to figure out what they're hit. Try some different sizes or different baits, and don't be afraid to go big if you're after that trophy fish. So, and even some of your live baits, if you're out, want to use live bait, or flathead especially, that using a big live bait, a big sucker, or carp, or what are some of the things that are like big bluegill, big hand-sized bluegill and green sunfish, those bullheads, and if it's legal, some of these white bass and crappie, they can take a pretty good bait down. Just make sure you got the proper equipment to battle one of them fish that are going to eat that, or at least make sure you got the right hook, right size. Sometimes you can surprise at some of the smaller catfish you catch on big baits. You put a big giant bait out there and you hook into one and you're thinking you're going to get a monster. Ends up being something smaller that bit off a little more than you can chew, maybe. But there's those things, and don't always get caught up with some of the stuff you see, like you're cutting open catfish and they're pulling a duck out of its stomach. I think they're opportunists. They'll take things, but just because you've seen that doesn't mean, I'm going to go get a duck and use it for bait. You stick with these consistent baits, like I said, unless you're just like one of those types that likes trying different things, and I get that totally. If that's your thing, go for it. That's how we find out what works. If it wasn't for the people out there trying all these new things, we may never know what some of the these new great baits are and stuff like that. So definitely something fine with that, but just know that these some of these baits, like I said, it's not broke, don't fix it. They're there just because you see it. That doesn't mean that must be what they feed on all the time. It's not always the case. I mean, I think there's even a video out there of a white-tailed deer eating a snake. So it doesn't mean you're going to get a snake and put it out in front of your trail camera. You're still going to be putting that corn and stuff out there. So that's just kind of an extreme silly example, but you get my point. Stick with kind of the basics. If you're new to it, just stick with the basics. Go with those native baits. and they could be fun. That's what I like about some of the bluegill and stuff, the rod and reel type of baits, is you can get the kids together, the family, go out, make a little trip to the pond or wherever, and get you a bucket full or a basket full, whatever, of some of them bluegills, and kids have a blast, or even some of them carp. I like taking my little girls out and throw some corn on a hook and get some of those buffalo and carp and stuff. And there's some fighters too, and watch my little ones fight those, and then they make bait as well, and it makes for a fun day with the family and kids, and obviously bluegill, and there's things. So that's another thing to kind of think about maybe is nature being one of those exception type things, even though like gizzard shad, when I use a shad head in the wintertime, seems to be one of the best baits at a lot of places. But there's this one lake I go to for some reason, and it's all blue cat, same species at each place, but this one lake for some reason it seems to be bluegill heads they want. Even if they'll hit the shad stuff, but that seems to be their at that lake, that for some reason. So those are the things to kind of consider. Sometimes a body of water has a different personality or whatever. So if that's the right wording, but you kind of get my point. Is sometimes a body of water has its own like little thing going on. You can maybe find out what that is, and I have some lakes that dip bait works phenomenal for channel cats, and some that it not so much. It's just on that body of water or this one. So whatever reason that might be, I don't know, but it's something to kind of maybe think about. That's where sometimes you can be like, well, they say wintertime use shad, but I'm catching more on this and that bait, and if it works for you, stick with that. There's no problem. With sticking with what works for you. So got some more deer coming up in the backyard there. May have to show you guys here in a minute, but so I think we covered everything I wanted to talk about. I tried to keep the video short, but like I said, this is one of my favorite subjects, and I can go on and on about it. Plus, anytime we talk fishing, who doesn't want to sit and talk about that? Kind of a quick recap. Channel cats are more of your smelly, stinky baits and grocery store baits. Channel or blues, you start getting more into your similar somewhat to a flathead as your premium baits and your other baits that you can native to the waters, and some of the grocery store baits you can catch on with blues. Flathead, you're going to get more into that super fresh and live baits, and not so much with the some of the store and stink baits, and consider like what works certain times of the year, that frozen and freshness and all that stuff we went over. One subject I forgot to bring up after I turn off the camera, I'm just going to go ahead and edit this in, was the types of catfish and times of year a little bit. So in wintertime, I'd mainly target the blue cats. They seem to be most active during the wintertime, cold times. You can definitely catch any three cats in the cold, that's for sure. My very first time out winter fishing for catfish was I caught a flathead. So definitely can be done, but that blue cat seems to be the most active. And this is once water temperatures reach around 50 degrees and go up from there. They say that's the temp that kind of gets that flathead to kind of wake up a little bit. That seems to be the most lethargic during the winter times, the flathead. But once the temps get to 50 and start going up, the warmer it gets from there, the more that bite for the flathead starts picking up. And then hot summertime, I tend to target the channel cat a little more, especially when the blues and flathead start spawning and that bite gets real tough. I'll start going after those channel cat a little bit. So kind of knowing that the spawn timing can kind of save you a little bit of frustration. I think we pretty much got it, and I'm ready for that cup of coffee. So I guess let me know in the comments of what some of your favorite baits are, and we'll kind of maybe talk baits a little bit there. Anything that you may have found out that might be kind of new to you, let me know in the comments. So if you like this video, want to hear more and hopefully see some more action videos of me out in the boat, hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.